chaos. Liberal groups had vowed to take it to the streets, planning hundreds of protests across the country. Right-wing militias were girding for battle. In a poll before Election Day, 75% of Americans voiced concern about violence. But instead, an eerie quiet descended. As President Trump refused to concede, the response was not mass action, but crickets. When media organizations called the race for Joe Biden on the 7th, jubilation broke out instead. Reactions through the U.S. After Biden wins presidential election, in precedented election, crowds took to the streets to celebrate the victory. And then a second odd thing happened. Amid Trump's attempt to reverse the result, corporate America turned on him. Hundreds of major business leaders, many of whom had backed his candidacy and supported his policies, called on him to concede. The president felt something was amiss. "I don't know," he said. "It's all very, very strange," end quote. Within days after the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint the winner, even while many key states were still being counted, end quote. Time magazine, quoting, "In a way, Trump was right." Now listen to this. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protest and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. This is not a source of conspiracy. This is Time magazine. The pact was formalized in a terse, little-known joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and AFL-CIO published on Election Day. Both sides would come to see it as sort of an implicit bargain inspired by the summer's massive, sometimes destructive racial justice protests, in which the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy. I want you to hear what I just read to you. When the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital, that is the Great Reset. When the forces of labor unions, the forces of business, join together with the government. A handshake between business and labor was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election. An extraordinary shadow effort dedicated not to winning the vote, but assuring it would be free and fair, credible and uncorrupted. For more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president. Though much of this activity took place on the left, it was separate from the Biden campaign. The scenario the shadow campaigners were desperate to stop was not a Trump victory. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all, a failure of the central act of democratic self-governance that has been a hallmark of America since its founding. Still quoting Time magazine, their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and helped secure hundreds of millions in public-private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. Still quoting Time magazine, they successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation. They used data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. They executed a national public awareness campaign that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over days and weeks, preventing Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory from getting more traction. After Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. The untold story of the election is the thousands of people of both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its very foundation. This is the inside story of the conspiracy to save the 2020 election, based on access to the group's inner workings, the never-before-seen documents and interviews with dozens of those involved across the political spectrum. It is the story of an unprecedented, creative, and determined campaign whose success also reveals how close the nation came to disaster. Every attempt to interfere with the proper outcome of the election was defeated, said Ian Basin, the co-founder of Protect Democracy, a non-partisan rule of law advocacy group. It's massively important for the country to understand that it didn't happen accidentally. The system didn't work magically. Democracy is not self-executing. I don't even know where to... This was all headed by a guy who spent 25 years as the senior advisor to the president of the AFL-CIO, the largest union in the country. A guy who has marshaled tactics and data to help its favored candidates. He's the guy who put I'm quoting Time magazine, he has been the wizard behind some of the biggest advances in political technology in recent decades. A group of liberal strategists that he brought together in the early 2000s to lead the creation of the Analyst Institute, a secretive firm that applies scientific methods to political campaigns.
What that seems to be saying is that much of what the right believed about the election is true. But it was good that that happened because it protected us from Trump.
It wasn't magic that made this happen.
That's pretty amazing.
Wow. This is why people believe in conspiracy theories.
Exactly.
You do not have a right in a free country to do this. You do not. If you believe it, you come out and you say it. And you explain what we're doing. You don't have meetings with Facebook and say, hey, can you put some canisters down here in these cities and make sure that we can get those votes returned? Oh, sure, we can do that. Hey, can we make sure that we have enough poll workers? Can we do a secretive campaign to make sure that we're defending all of these rights, to make sure that you can just send out any ballot to anyone, non-requested? That was their gig. And I'd like to see the names of those who are bipartisan, because I can guarantee you they're the same group of people that are now hiding for their lives, that were part of the Lincoln Project, because they were covering up for a pedophile. Another reason people believe in crazy things like QAnon. Because these crazy things just keep happening. And now they've gotten to a place to where they will confirm it. And you know why? You know why this is? Because they know. Most of America won't even pay attention. They won't even pay attention. You're at home, you're comfortable. How long do you think this would have lasted